Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Barely Bookish podcast. Today, we're going to be continuing our discussion of The Great Gatsby, and we'll be covering chapters 2 and 3, and I will be joined once again by Jessica. So this episode really just kind of jumps into it immediately because the previous recording was really long, so it's cut in half now, which is great, and it's a lot of fun. I think you guys will really enjoy Jessica. I hope you guys enjoyed Jessica in the first episode, but I think there's a lot of fun discussion in this one, and I think The Great Gatsby has a lot of potential for a lot of, not criticism, but like a lot of discussion, I guess is what I'm going for. And I think that makes these kinds of episodes a little different and a lot like very enjoyable, at least in my opinion. So I'm really hoping you guys are enjoying that as well. So without further ado, I don't really have any big announcements. Oh, the only announcement I really do have, on Friday we'll be doing our Great Gatsby comparison. So that's over on patreon.com. So if you want some more exclusive content and some extra episodes, and you can go over and subscribe over on patreon.com/barelybookish. And then every single month you get an exclusive episode over there. So this month will be the Great Gatsby comparison. So we'll be comparing the 1974 movie with Robert Redford, and we'll be comparing that to the 2013 movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I will be doing that with Nova. So if you want some extra content, please go check out the Patreon page. It's just $10 a month and helps support this lovely podcast that you're listening to. So yeah, but without further ado, let's get into the episode. So then, chapter 2. And okay, so I had no idea what was going on at the beginning. And my note is, so there's a gross farm and a giant man for some reason. Because he just like describes like this dirty wasteland and like this giant mural painting situation. And I'm like, whoa, where are we? I need a little context of how we got here.
Yeah, it's like suddenly he's in this place that's totally desolate, and the only thing there is this faded billboard of like what I can just imagine is the freakiest picture of this dude's eyes.
Yeah.
And I will say that image is something that is so discussed in literary criticism of this book, and what that image means and what that setting means. And it does kind of hit you as this is a place so different than the place that we just came from.
I wondered if it was like because this chapter is very like looking back on it, I wonder if that was like supposed to be reminiscent of Nick's mood, because he doesn't seem like he wanted to go to New York with Tom, and Tom's like, we're going, and he's like, okay, cool.
I mean, yeah, okay, sure, I'll go to New York, I guess, if I have to. Why are you forcing me?
Yeah.
I feel like it's definitely an allusion to the feelings and the weirdness of the situation and whatnot. I don't want to spoil anything, but I know that this setting gets seen again in the book.
Okay.
But it definitely felt like it's even more detailed described of how shabby it is because of maybe the mood that Nick is in. Sure, I can see that. Sure.
I'm just imagining Nick being like, I'm on a terrible trip. Like when you take like a 4-year-old on a road trip they don't want to be on, and they're like, this car's ugly, this food tastes bad, I want chicken nuggets, I want to watch Paw Patrol. I had to think of like a kid's movie as like show, I guess. That's what I'm imagining, is Tom being like, can I just like get out of this? And they're like, no.
Well, it almost feels
Nick, I mean.
Or it almost feels to me like, it was a situation like Nick was like, well, I'm going to go to New York for the day. And Tom was like, I'm going to go too. Let's go together. And then all of a sudden just stops and was like, hey, what? We're actually going to do this. Don't care what you had on your list.
Literally.
Yeah.
And it's funny to me that we don't know what day this is. Like Nick might have had to work. Like I don't think this is the weekend.
But Tom doesn't care. Tom doesn't work.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to work.
So my note is Nick is meeting Tom's mistress. I'm ready for the tea.
Oh yeah.
Like Tom is so open about this, which makes me hate him more.
Mm-hmm.
So Nick went to New York with Tom, and then Tom's like, "Hey, I want you to meet my girl." And Nick's like, "Could I not?" And Tom's like, "No, we're going." So this is my note because I was trying to figure out what's going on right now because I didn't know he was like a serial cheater or what. So I was like, is this an open relationship or is Tom a tool? If Daisy is cool with it, I don't care. But I feel like I need some confirmation from Daisy right now because I'm hating Tom.
And I feel like regardless of that, the fact
Mm-hmm.
that he's so open about it and he's just so proud of it and
Mm-hmm.
he's not hiding it from anyone like in their social circles or anything, that is given the context of the time period,
Yeah.
such a disrespectful thing against
Mm-hmm.
Daisy, and it really reflects on all aspects. So
Yeah.
regardless of even if they had some sort of agreement, which I don't think that this book leads you
It
to
doesn't,
believe that it
yeah, it doesn't
does,
seem like it.
it's just that behavior is so abhorrent.
Mm-hmm.
That's not appropriate behavior no matter what, the way
Yeah.
that he handles the situation.
Because like if they were a polyamorous couple, I'd be like, okay, cool. Like, great, do you, I don't care. But like it doesn't lead you to believe that. And I was like, okay, so you're just a trash bag.
I mean, because given the context of this time, I'm sure that polyamory was alive and well. But
Yeah.
even in that situation, him being so open and so flaunting of
Hmm.
something that clearly based on their social standing and
Yeah.
their families and whatnot is not the norm and is not
Hmm.
something that people would look on as normal or respectable. Certainly, that is Tom making poor choices.
Yeah. Because I feel like if they were, they would have mentioned, like, he would have
For
been
sure.
like, oh, yeah, my girlfriend, instead of saying, like, and them being very open about it while she was in the room. But he never says anything while
Mhm.
Daisy's in the room. So I was like, okay. So I was like, so you're not a great person.
No, no, definitely. Another one in the column of why we don't like Tom.
Hmm. Just adding on to Tom hate in this podcast.
It's now like the opposite of a Tom Stan account. It's a Tom hate account.
Yeah. Listen, I love it. I am okay with that. Send me all the Tom hate because, like, I agree with it. I don't care what it is. You can tell me that he reminds you of a raisin bran muffin, and I'm going to say, yeah, I feel that. I can see it, you know?
Willing to go on that journey with you.
I'll just send them to you, and you're going to be like, this is great. I love this. Thank you. So at this moment, where Tom and Nick are walking around, and he takes him to like this auto body shop, I guess. And I'm like, why are we here, Tom? What's going on? Like, why are we at this auto body shop? And then they're like, oh, this nice apartment over it. And then a woman comes down who is the auto body shop owner's wife. And I'm like, oh no, his mistress has a husband.
A clueless husband in the dust
Yeah.
filled auto shop where it seems that Tom is trying to
Buy a
string
car?
along his, yeah, well, no, I think he's trying to string along like his reason for being there as this he might potentially sell this car to this
Mm.
guy or might potentially let this guy work on his car or whatever. No, sell it. And so that's his ruse for why he's there in this clueless dude's auto body shop.
I just feel so bad for this husband because I feel like he's trying.
Mhm.
He seems like a decent guy. He owns the shop. They have a really nice apartment above the shop. And, you know, I'm assuming that's so that he can go home early to his wife, care for her, make her happy. And like the entire time, this dude keeps coming in, and then his wife keeps immediately disappearing as soon as this guy leaves. And I'm like, oh no, like this is almost worse.
Mhm. Or is the apartment actually nice upstairs, or is that just what Nick assumes must be the case based
Yeah.
on the
how pretty
situation.
she is, probably.
Yeah, because for all we know, it could be just as dusty and just as desolate upstairs as it was in the shop.
Mhm.
Even just that description of, and we're probably getting so much in the weeds, the listeners are probably
Yeah,
totally bored,
it's fine.
but
I love it.
the description of the guy and his shop, it definitely doesn't lead you to feel like this is someone who has a lot of hope, a lot of spirit, really interesting. I mean, he's not taking care of the shop that well. The
Yeah.
interior was unprosperous and bare. The only car visible was a dust covered wreck. Like, that's not
Yeah.
a bustling mechanic shop with a guy who's, virile and whatever. And then in
Mhm.
walks Tom, who, like, we basically described as the embodiment of the guy on the top, on the front of one of those bodice ripping romance novels. Like,
Yeah.
plus add a rugby ball in his hand or whatever. That's basically how he's been described. And he meets this dude as the mechanic.
Yeah.
And then down walks the lady with her, her curves and her mature, knowing look or whatever.
I feel so bad for this husband. I really do. Because I'm feeling he has full faith and trust in his wife. And now, like, she's like, okay, bye. Don't ask how I got these designer handbags. Bye. And I'm
I
just like,
I feel
oh.
bad. I feel bad for the husband, but honestly, I feel most bad for Nick because he's sort of trapped in the situation.
I know. I feel bad that Nick's like that person that just knows all the juicy gossip, but he doesn't want to know any of it. And he's like,
Yes.
please stop telling me. And they're like, you seem like a trustworthy soul. And he's like, no, please, I don't want to know.
Yes, I feel that 100%. I would say he's the kind of guy who has a face that looks like you can tell him your life story,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, every single person has seen that face.
Yeah. And he's just like burdened with the truth. And he's like, okay. And he's like, am I too nice of a guy to like tell her? Or like, am I too trusting? Like, he's like, how do I get out of this?
Exactly.
So Myrtle and Tom are just like walking down the street and they're dragging Nick along to this entire adventure afternoon. And Myrtle randomly buys a dog for $10 for no reason. And I'm like, so you must be going with him all the time because she can't bring that dog back home.
Oh
So,
no.
so I'm
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
who's
that's,
taking care of this dog?
she's not thinking about that. She's all about immediate gratification. And
Yeah,
poor Nick being dragged along. And this is the part where he's like, I gotta go. They're like,
I
yeah,
know.
no, you don't. It's just another one of those things. Like, it's immediate gratification. It's fun to have him with them. It's fun to get this dog. The dog is cute. Oh, I'm going to take it home to my apartment here in the city because
Yeah.
that makes me feel good. And it's all just immediate things. It's not realistic. It's not thinking through, what does it mean to have this dog that is
Yeah.
not going to be this cute little puppy forever, and frankly is going to change its needs the second you walk away from this person selling it.
Mhm.
um yeah.
I know. I was just like, it hurt me. It's like when people get their kids dogs for Christmas, you know?
Mhm, mhm.
It hurts me the same way because I'm like, is this dog gonna be taken care of? I'm like nervous. Like if you never had that talk with your significant other or partner or whatever to make sure, hey, I really want to get a dog. Can we fit this in our schedule? Like if you have not had that conversation, do not get a pet.
Yeah, as a dog lover,
Mhm.
this is definitely one of those where you're on the side going, that was a poor decision.
Yeah. So I'm
um
like, I'm worried about the dog safety at this point.
mhm,
Like,
mhm.
I'm sure they have people that'll take care of the dog, but I'm like, it's not gonna get the love it needs, and I'm nervous.
Which then is another thing in the Tom Holland, because he
Mhm.
obviously doesn't care about the safety and sanctity of dogs. So
Another one out for me. He's like one of those people that has like a hunting dog, but like it sleeps outside and it's only brought out for
yes,
hunting. That's what I'm getting.
but he doesn't even hunt. So, like, really what he has a hunting dog for status, and as far as
Mhm.
he's concerned, it sleeps outside. But thank God there's a guy who actually works in the stables and who takes care of the dog as if it was its loving own. That's what I
Yes.
like to think.
Okay, I like that better. I like that theory because I'm just imagining that like when Tom wakes up, the dog's there and he looks at the dog for about 20 minutes, and that's the only 20 minutes the dog's in a cage. And then like the
Oh,
guy's like, all right, let's go back home, Champ. And Champ's
exactly.
like, no, no,
That's
it's
what I
fine.
like to think about. Yeah. Because then they describe, I mean, it's so clear that this dog is just an item because
Mhm.
they even describe Mrs. Wilson gathering up her dog and her other purchases. Like,
I
what?
know. It's like, okay. And then Tom and Myrtle literally have their own apartment in New York. So I was like, they must go there pretty often, like to just have this whole apartment.
Yeah. This whole apartment that's furnished and
Mhm.
decorated, and they know the neighbors, like the weird neighbors who also live in the
I
building,
know.
come and visit. And then they go off to, like, I don't know, have some alone time, and they
Uh-huh.
leave Nick in the living room with the
Who's
dog.
also wasted at this point. Like Nick is like black out. He's like can't read. And Tom and Myrtle go away. And I said probably is to do the do. Um like it's implied. I think we all know why they
I
went away.
I feel like it's implied that it's definitely doing the do
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And then like Nick's just I'm imagining him doing like that, like that dad thing where you just kind of like sit in a chair and you're like, you okay? Like, and they're just like sitting there looking at nothing, doing absolutely nothing, and just sitting in a chair, like as if you put Nick on pause for a few minutes.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I also imagine him trying as hard as he can not to hear anything. Because
Hmm.
if you've ever been, like, in someone's house and like something's going on that you don't want anything to do with it, that could be a conversation, whatever. It doesn't have to be people doing the do, but whatever. And you're just sitting there like, just gonna pretend like I'm not listening to this. Like I can't hear anything. Like I'm not involved because on really like a bunch of levels, he's in a very precarious situation.
Yeah.
So, there's that level of like, just in general, this is weird and I don't want to be here. But then that level of like, um, this dude is like flagrantly, actively cheating on his wife,
Hmm.
who is my cousin, while
Yeah.
I sit here. And also, he got me drunk on liquor that may or may not be legal. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
Um,
just think Nick's going through it at this point.
yeah. And then he left me to talk to a bunch of these randos who I've
Hmm.
never met before, but definitely are described quite colorfully.
Yeah. So like then one of the people that comes is Myrtle's sister Catherine, and she's looking at the place as if she owns it, like looking at all the furniture, and like this is a point where Nick's like, "Hey, like, do you live here or something?" And she's like, no, like I live in a hotel with my girlfriend." And I'm like,
Not buying it at all.
yeah, I'm like, first of all, like I know that like it's a different time, but like living in a hotel seems a little strange. If you
Yeah. I think that there were like boarding houses and like
Mhm.
hotel type things that were for unmarried women where they would live together. I mean, you see it. I've seen it a lot in those period dramas from,
Mhm.
this time period to like through the 40s, of a bunch of like, nurses living in nurses lodging kind of thing, real,
Yeah.
real adorable. So I feel like the casual reader, that wouldn't be too weird of this
Mhm.
time period. But I definitely got the vibe of like, oh yeah, no, you actually do live here, and you probably were tipped off that she was coming, and so you left. Like,
Yeah. That's what I was trying to figure out if that's what was happening or if she was jealous of her sister or if it's like one of those things where maybe Tom has both.
I don't know about that last part. I didn't get him to I didn't get her to be like, in my reading of it, that
Mhm.
she was also a mistress of his, but
Yeah.
definitely she has more familiarity with this home than I think,
Yeah.
just the casual I stop by occasionally. And if nothing else, it just shows even more how often they come to the city if she's
Mhm.
that familiar with it.
Or I wonder if like Tom like if she owns it and then Tom pays her off to say that he owns it when he brings Myrtle over.
I don't know. Maybe we'll get to that.
You're like, we shall see. Anyways.
I don't think that that part is. I mean, I will just say I don't think it spoils anything, but I don't think that part is something that's like quite as much involved
Mm-hmm.
with the overall scope of the story. But
Yeah.
it is one of those, it's one of those little teeny interesting details that if you want to take the time to really delve into it in this story, there's a lot to unpack.
I know. I feel like I want someone else to do the critical readings and then like sum it up for me.
I mean, type Great Gatsby into JSTOR and you will find all those
True.
people who've done all those critical. You will find people who've done critical reading to find something that you didn't even know was a possible thing. You'll go back to the book and be like, wow, they did say that in the book. I don't know how that person got from here to there, but damn if they didn't spend 10 pages telling me.
Oh, that's the kind of things I love. I love like fan theories. I love fan fictions. I like alternative
Mhm.
realities. Like, you know what? Do tell me how uh Draco Malfoy is in love with Harry Potter. I do want to know. Like, tell me about
Yeah,
it.
sure.
Like,
Tell me how you see that. Absolutely. Let's
I'm
work this
like,
out.
I want to know. Yeah. Or that whole fan theory where uh Fred and George were like saw that Ron was sleeping with Peter every night and never said anything because they had the Marauders map. Like, tell me about that. I do want to know.
Yeah, like what did you think that was about,
I
man?
know. Were they just like super accepting brothers and they're like, oh, he's not out to us. Like, we're never gonna
Or
bring
like,
it up.
did they think there was a ghost named Peter that was like just randomly obsessed with sleeping on top of Ron every night? Like,
Yeah.
what's the story here?
I know. I want the thought process and I want to know how you got there. Like, I would
Mhm,
love that for
mhm.
everyone in the world to experience and also myself.
Absolutely. 100%. Give me that information.
So they're having this whole party.
So
And
hold on a second. Before
oh,
you
go
get too far down, did you talk about Mr. McKee?
and his like weird photography obsession thing.
Yeah. So how about that? Right after they introduced the sister, they introduced this next dude who is described as pale feminine
Hmm.
man. So this plays in with some more of those thoughts of Nick's sexuality
Hmm.
because this guy keeps talking about how he wants to take pictures of him and he's taken pictures of Myrtle. He's done all this
Hmm.
stuff. He's an interesting character.
I know. I'm like,
I mean,
this
maybe
one's
not
good.
as far as like Gatsby's concerned, but as far as Nick is concerned, he is a
Yeah,
very interesting character to me.
I know. I want more about the side characters. I know we're not going to get that much about them, but I'm like, I want to know. And
Yeah.
like, his wife is just like, oh, I've done all these photos for him, and I'm like,
Mhm.
is she your wife or is she like a stand-in person so you
Yeah.
can always have photography done? Like, I don't.
Mhm. Like, take me on this journey with you,
Yeah.
F.
Take
Scott
my hand,
Fitzgerald.
lead me down the Yellow Brick Road. I want to know what's going on.
Okay, anyway, sorry. Go on with your next note.
So Myrtle is like absolutely roasting her husband for no reason at this party. And I'm like, okay, Myrtle, like unnecessary, but all right.
The
And
lady doth protest too much.
yeah. And then Myrtle says that her and Tom met on the subway by chance and like very creepily says that like, yeah, he basically kind of kidnapped me.
Mhm.
But like,
After he like rubbed himself against me,
yeah.
a woman who was alone on the train. So after he like kind of weirdly maybe adjacent to assaulted you, now
Yeah.
you're alone with him and doing God knows what.
Yeah. And she's like, all kept thinking was like, what did she say? Like, I'll survive or something.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, are you okay? Like, do you need to be rescued? Like, should I call someone for you,
Um,
Myrtle? Like,
you can't live forever. You can't live
oh, that's
forever.
what
She
it
kept
is.
thinking over and over. Well, and then they casually gloss over the fact that one of the reasons that she's shit talking her husband or whatever is that they both hate their people that they're married to and if Daisy wasn't a Catholic, then Tom could have broken up with her and divorced her, or whatever. And I'm just imagining Nick being like,
I didn't
incidentally,
even
she was
see
not a
that part.
Catholic.
I
Oh
was
yeah,
like,
that's like right after they're talking about how neither of them can stand their significant other um, Catherine says triumphantly, it's really his wife that's keeping them apart. She's a Catholic and they don't believe in divorce. Daisy was not a Catholic, and I was a little shocked at the elaborateness of the lie.
I read chapter 1 right before bed, so I must have just like accidentally skipped over that part. But I was like, that's.
But anyway,
The fact that like Tom is telling her that's why he won't divorce Daisy.
it's so ludicrous.
So then everyone's like drunk, and Myrtle is like chanting Daisy's name, and then Tom breaks her nose.
Oh yeah, because he's just a brute. Like he just can't hold back.
I was like, and it didn't make it sound like it was an accident. It made it sound like it was very much on purpose that he broke her nose.
Yeah, it makes it sound like he literally punches her.
Yeah, like, but they said like he open hands it.
Yeah.
And so like
he literally like strikes her in the face on purpose.
Yeah. I was like,
with all of his strength.
Because no one at the party was concerned either. They like stopped the bleeding, and then Nick's like, this is my cue to go. And then Mr. McKee's also like, yeah, that sounds cool. And they both like leave.
They both like leave, and then really at the end of the chapter, you're given what plenty of literary critics have wanted to talk in great depth about, this wonderful scene of Nick standing beside Mr. McKee's bed while he was sitting up between the sheets, clad only in his underwear. So
do we have different versions of this book? Hold on.
This is the last page of chapter 2. So Nick gets in the elevator to leave because he's like, this is way too much for me. I cannot be here for any more of this shit. They get in the elevator, and Mr. McKee asks him, come to lunch someday, he suggested, as we groaned down the elevator. Where? Anywhere. And then, the elevator guy's like, don't touch my lever. ... Like phallic symbol right there. Ooh. And so he says, all right, I'd be glad to. And then the next thing you know, we have a set of ellipses. And he's like, I was standing beside his bed, and he was sitting up between the sheets, clad in his underwear, with a great portfolio in his hands. And the next thing you know, Nick finds himself lying half asleep in the cold lower level of the Pennsylvania station. So like basically drunk off his like face in the train station.
I'm shook. Sorry for my dog barking, dear listeners. I'm not going to cut that out because it's too important. But
so that whole scene of Nick going in the elevator, and then being in the room with this photographer, and it's very sexually charged, the scene, and then sort of almost seeming like he was intoxicated to the point of not knowing what happened. That is something that people love to discuss. So regardless of if I don't really know as a reader if, as a side note, like Nick's sexuality matters at all in my understanding of him telling the story and him being a narrator of the story. But it's really interesting that Fitzgerald makes this decision to include these little snippets about Nick and his private life throughout the book, because this is now at least the second point where he's given some illusion that he has had some sort of interactions that are not strictly as we would think of them as like heterosexual relations. And it's kind of like, do I need to know that as a reader to understand the rest of the story? Spoiler alert, having read the entire story, I don't think that that's the case, but it's just interesting. And a lot of people love to talk about it. And it is something that kind of sneaks up on you. All of a sudden you're like, what? Like, how did we get here?
I do think it's interesting too, to think that like, maybe he didn't see it represented enough in literature. So he's like, I'm just going to like throw this in a little bit, and we'll see if anybody picks up on it.
Yeah. And I think like it's pretty known that he himself and his wife, they had really progressive views and experience, and their relationship was different than, strictly like heterosexual monogamous relationship. And so it could be that, maybe he's channeling a little bit of himself or his own relations or people that he knows and loves. Absolutely. But I definitely don't think this is a throwaway. I don't think this is something that is in the story as like, oh yeah, no, that's not like, oh, Tef, that's definitely not gay. Like, I think it's intentional that he
Yeah.
put that in there, but I don't personally know for myself like what it does to change the rest of the story, really.
Yeah.
Only to say that in his so prior to this, I think Nick had seemed to be pretty much a really just even, moderate kind of dude. And now um, under the tutelage of one Tom Buchanan, he's
Hmm.
staying out all night long and getting blackout drunk. And so
Yeah.
that kind of talks even more to the kind of influence that a Tom Buchanan can have.
Yeah. Honestly. I do also though wonder if like maybe the author was like wanting to kind of hint at it to be like, Nick is this great guy and also there are other things besides heterosexuality and they're still great people because
Oh
like I
yeah,
feel
and
like
that's yeah,
yeah,
I think that's valid too. I mean that could be. He doesn't really ever, as far as I know, and again, there's a scholar out there of F. Scott Fitzgerald who's going to tell me otherwise, but um I don't know that he directly addresses that at all, but it certainly could be read that way from a
yeah,
modern viewer because yeah, Nick is a pretty cool dude. He's a pretty awesome dude and he
it's
is
nice,
not
has morals.
yeah, he's nice, he has morals. He's not strictly heterosexual as we can tell from the book. I mean,
Hmm.
but he's still a cool, nice dude and he still is an upstanding individual who seems trustworthy in his narration. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. It's good to have representation that doesn't suck.
Yeah, literally.
um, and you know it is interesting, very interesting to look into. But anyway, that was a huge digression.
We love a little tangent. It's okay. So now chapter 3.
Dun, 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 dun.
So Nick is looking over at his neighbor's house and talking about how he sees like all sorts of parties. And this is like his summary of the summer.
Mm.
And tonight he's having a gigantic party and Nick's actually going to go. And
Oh,
this is like the point where he mentions that he was actually specifically invited and the rest of these people just kind of show up like as an amusement park.
yeah, it's kind of interesting how he talks about basically like there's so many parties all the time that are so lavish that he's completely desensitized to it, that he can just be like, yeah, so over the course of the summer this happened about 100 times, this is what
Yeah.
happens. Yeah, and then to know that he specifically, like you said, he specifically was asked. A lot
Hmm.
of these people are just don't even know who Gatsby is, don't know anything
Yeah.
about him, but he gets an actual butler to come over and give him a written invitation.
I
I
know.
mean, yeah, that's really cool.
I think that already says a lot about Gatsby's character too, is that he's
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm gonna formally invite you. I know you live in a shack, but like here's a formal invitation. Like the fact
Right.
that he treats him the same as he would treat anyone else that's his friend, whether they're rich or not,
Hmm.
kind of like hit me right. I was like, all right, we're cool. Like so far, so good. This is a point in your favor, Gatsby.
But it also makes you question just right from the beginning, if Nick can say that he's one of the few people that he knows had actually been invited, it really points that Gatsby is not the kind of dude who probably has a lot of friends.
Hmm.
Um,
I think he's got a
and
lot of acquaintances.
yeah, like a lot of people know what they think Gatsby is. They see
Mhm.
him as, but they probably almost nobody actually knows Gatsby.
Yeah, and I think that's very telling when we get to like the part where they start gossiping in a second.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that is a very telling. So before we get there, Nick is completely unable to find Gatsby anywhere, but he does find Jordan Baker and he's like, "Oh, hey, I know you. Let's hang out." Like he's basically trying to cling to someone that he knows to like follow around like a little lost puppy. And like I've been there, so I'm like, yeah, I get
100%.
that.
Yeah, I felt those feelings hard. I was like, wow, Nick, this is the time honored tradition of finding the person you know and clinging hard. Got it.
It's like when you go like pre-Rona
Mhm.
when we would go to like clubs and stuff and you're like you show up with your friend and then your friend starts like talking to a guy and you're like, oh no, And you like looking around and you see like that roommate from college and you're like, I know you. Okay. Hey, how are you? What's up? I have not seen you in forever. And you're just like looking back at your friend and you're like, you selfish person. You left me alone. Okay. Yeah. It's nice to see you again. How are you?
Or I think if it is like if you go to like a work party or a holiday party, again pre-Rona, and it seems like you don't know everyone, or you probably don't even know majority, but you know one person or two people, and you're like, you're my best friend for this evening,
Yeah.
and somehow you just stick with that person. Oh, would you like another drink? Let's go get one together.
Yeah, you're like,
That's
okay, we'll follow each other to the bathroom. Oh,
yeah.
you're getting a drink, I will follow you to bar.
Oh, you're leaving?
Let's
I guess I'm leaving too. Even though we weren't actually really friends before this moment, I knew your face.
Yeah, now you are my best friend. Thank you.
I will say that's one thing I am not missing this holiday season is that feeling.
Yeah. I only worked at small companies, so I didn't really have that issue. But when I was in the American Marketing Association in college, we had this giant like
Mhm.
end of year, essentially Christmas, but it was like an end of year dinner, end of semester, I guess. And I was like, I only knew a couple of people, and I brought my boyfriend along with me, and we all just like huddled together. And I was
Oh,
like, I
for
will speak
sure.
to no one else.
For sure. Hmm.
Um, so Jordan lost her golf tournament, and I was like,
Wah
oh,
wah.
yeah, I was like, okay, yikes, bringing down the mood immediately, but it's fine.
No
But
big
every
deal.
yeah, they like say it in passing. He's like, oh yeah, I remembered she lost her tournament. As like everyone's like, oh, poor you, and Jordan's like, mm, mm-hmm.
Exactly. She has like no reaction to it.
Yeah.
It sucked.
And then everyone's talking about how Gatsby's really nice. And then they're like, hey, I heard Gatsby killed a man once. And then someone else like, I heard he was a German spy during the war. And I'm like, is he even German? Like no one seemed to have confirmed that he's actually German.
Mm-mm. No one knows really anything about him. It's all just I heard this
Mhm.
one thing I heard. It's just like he's a gossip mill. I
Yeah.
mean, he's a celebrity really to these people. I think of it the same as I think of, you know, there when you think of like all the again pre-Rona, you would see like those celebrities in Hollywood, like the Kardashians or whatever, and you think of like they're having these big parties and there's like random people there. Obviously, not everyone knows them. They just know of them. They think they know about them,
Mhm.
and they know about this larger than life image of who they are. And each one of those people is like a real honest to God person who has their own life or whatever, but it doesn't matter because this is what we think we know about them.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the vibe that I got. Like he's a celebrity, and just being they're not even talking about him like he's a real person. Like the fact that they're just casually being like, I heard he might have killed somebody,
Yeah.
and
And
they're
you're
really
like,
excited about it.
okay.
Like what? That's eh,
What in the
that
1984?
right. Like that's not even real. Like in real life, if you knew somebody really well and you heard that they killed somebody, you'd be a little bit more concerned than just
Yeah,
idle conversation about that.
I know.
Um,
And it's like he also fought in the military. Like, yeah, he's killed people. Like, that's
yeah,
kind of what you do when you're at war. So I'm like,
yeah, it was just like a lot of really weird little tidbits. And then, yeah.
yeah. So Jordan and Nick go off and try and find Gatsby, but they enter his library and he's got a really nice one. But there's like this super drunk dude. And this dude mentions that he's happened to have been drunk for a week now.
Yes.
And I was like, yo, like that's not good. Like he's like,
Oh.
yeah, I thought staring at these books would make me sober. Also, fun fact, they're not cardboard, they're real books. And I was like, buddy, what are you on? Like coke? I don't know. I don't
Well,
know drugs very well, but I was like, I hope you're okay.
well, and it shows like, okay, so when the people are sober, they're a lot more restrained about what they say, about what they suspect about Gatsby. And
Hmm.
in this case, he just like there's no F's given here. Like
Hmm.
he just is beyond even having a show of what he thinks. He thinks this dude is fake, but now he's in this library and he's like, oh my God, the books are real. Like he's not faking this part of it. There's books
Yeah.
in here.
And it's like, and this is some dude that like someone happened to have randomly ran into and invited him to come.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. So then that they move to Nick is randomly talking to some man and he says he hasn't seen the host yet. And then the guy goes, oh, actually, I'm Gatsby.
Yeah, like real casually. I'm just talking to this dude. Yeah. Which then also shows that really, I mean, I guess Gatsby wasn't any more or less impressive than anyone else that was there, at least on first glance, if he didn't even have an idea.
Yeah. I was like, all right.
But I also think it's interesting there that the first thing they talk about together is their military service. And I think that having that connection is something that allows Gatsby to feel like a little bit more even that he wants to open up to Nick, or maybe he wants to get to know him a little bit more. Obviously there's probably other motives that we'll see as we go on, but it's interesting to me that that's what he first says. It's not some of the people in the party, you get the idea that he really probably asks them really, really base conversations. But in this, he's like, oh, maybe I knew you from the war. You look kind of familiar to me. And they talk about some stuff like that. So,
yeah, I thought that was like a cool, like evening the playing field so that I feel like that also opened Nick up to make Nick feel like he is someone instead of like he's happens to live next door to Gatsby kind of thing.
And it almost feels like Gatsby is just this really expert person at making everybody feel at ease and understanding what every single person needs, wants, desires, and putting all of their information or all of their you're going to have to cut out some of this because anyway, he's really good at figuring out what everybody else wants and needs and putting all of their needs and wants ahead of his own, because they even say, like, when that girl ripped her dress or whatever, it's like he doesn't want to be a problem to anyone. He doesn't want to be a burden to anyone. He doesn't want to start gossip with anyone. Like, he just wants everyone to have a great time, and that's it. He doesn't want anybody to leave his house having any bad feeling about what was happening there. So yeah,
I was like, that kind of like warmed me to him to a little bit too. I was like, I kind of like people like that where they're like, I just legitimately want you to have a good time, and whatever I have to do to make you have a good time is great. It makes me worry about Gatsby though, because like
definitely
when you do that, you're depriving yourself of having an equally good time. But so Gatsby goes to answer a call and Nick turns to Jordan and is like, bruh, and starts asking all these details, and no one knows anything about him. And this is like the first time you're really cued into just how little people know. Like even Jordan, who seems to be rather comfortable around Gatsby enough to at least know what he looks like, still has no details about him at all.
Anyhow, he gives large parties. I like large parties.
Like, all right, Jordan.
But it's like they don't care to know.
Yeah.
Because other than Nick, we didn't see anybody asking him any questions or engaging with him. And if they don't know anything about him, then already Nick has one up on them because he knows that about him, or thinks we don't know if Gatsby's telling the truth or not, but like, here we are.
Yeah. So then a butler comes up to them and says that Gatsby would like to see Jordan alone. And so she goes off. And I was like, I feel like that was supposed to, if you were reading this and you didn't know anything about Gatsby and Daisies, I feel like that was supposed to like cue you in, like maybe he's going to have like a thing with Jordan. But immediately, like as I read that, I was like, that's kind of weird. But I didn't ever think that like they were going to have a thing.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I never got that feeling. I definitely got the feeling of he wanted to ask her a question. And I felt like we had. So, I mean, obviously it's really hard to read this book and feel like you don't know anything about it. So even if all you knew is like there's a character named Gatsby and he loves this character named Daisy in the book and he's obsessed with her, like whatever, even if that's all you knew, then you start the book by meeting Daisy, and when you meet her, she's with this person who's like a very close friend of hers, Jordan. And so the next thing you know, when we don't know if these two characters are what Gatsby and Daisy's interaction is, or if they even have anything, do they even know each other? Like you don't know anything from reading the book. You definitely are like, okay, so Daisy's best friend just got pulled aside by this dude. Like, or maybe not best friend, but like a close confidant of Daisy just got pulled aside by this dude. I wonder if this has something to do with Daisy.
Yeah, I was like, weird. Back burner for now. Basically,
Yeah.
like a lot of this, I'm just like, okay, information I'm taking in, and I'm going to set it here. We will analyze later.
Yeah, that's definitely a back burner, though. Like, definitely there's something deeper to that. He wants to know something from her. Be it, and it could be related to Daisy, but it could also be like, he seems like he likes to know who his guests are so that he can help them. So maybe she had the golf tournament. I mean, I don't know. He seems to know a lot more about the people there than they know about him.
Yeah, for sure. So it's getting really late and everyone is trying to like fight with their significant other for some reason. Like, I don't know if you've seen this, but it's like this whole topic and they're like, why do boomers always hate their wives?
Yes.
And it's like, it was very reminiscent of that conversation to me. I was like, why?
For sure.
Like, I don't know why everyone hates their significant other. Why is no one marrying for love? Like, you don't have to marry someone you hate. Divorce exists.
I feel like you see that in all kinds of media that involves people prior to when divorce or marital counseling or whatever were accepted. Or when people had to marry for reasons other than love, were forced to. That's where you see that. So like basically any classic that's going to be talked about, any of those movies from from the 40s or whatnot, like those classic movies, you're going to see that played out. And it's from a current sensibility, it definitely looks a lot different. But yeah, because it's always played off as like, oh, husbands and wives just hate each other and they fight all the
ball
time.
and chain. And I was like,
exactly. You're like, that's not how I feel about my spouse though. Like at all, even a little bit. I like I love spending time with them.
Yeah.
I
saw
uncomfortable.
I saw this video this morning about someone rating wedding toppers. And there was like that one of like, and it's always the straight couples, okay? There was one of that
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, just sitting in a chair and gaming, and then the wife's like over him, all mad, and I'm like, if you're already setting up your wedding day like that.
Oh, there's like legitimately one where the bride is like literally has the husband tied up and is pulling him to the altar. Like there's some really look up wedding toppers if you want to go into that. There's some.
Oh my goodness.
When I was planning for my wedding, there were you think about those things even if you don't traditionally want them, they pop up. I said the word wedding around my phone, and the next thing, I'm actually probably after we get off this call, I'm going to get like a bunch of Instagram ads about wedding stuff. So you start looking to see, what's out there, what exists, and you just type in wedding topper. Oh my God, there's some real winners.
Yeah, I gotta send you that video after this call so you can experience that. But it's, I was just thinking about that.
Yikes.
News bulletin: don't marry someone you hate. Okay. Anyways.
I think actually, if we had started with that, this book might not exist.
This book either is going to be really short, take place 20 years in the past, or
there you go, right there.
So Nick says goodbye to Gatsby, and Gatsby's like, hey, let's go on the hydroplane tomorrow. And Nick's like, okay, sure, if that's what you want to do. And so they set a time for 9. And as Nick gets outside, there's a car wreck. This is the first mention of like a tire falling off a car, but it's mentioned again later. And I didn't even write it down, but I was like, why are all these tires just falling off these people's car? And like, he's in a ditch, and also they're drinking and driving.
Yeah, I would file this one away for later.
Okay. Like, I hope it gets brought back up again, but I was like,
I
okay.
I think I think that I think you will, as the story develops, you'll see that this is sort of foreshadowing of something else that will happen. I really don't want to spoil it.
Yeah.
Um,
It's because I don't know
I
anything.
Yeah, I think it shows though kind of how little regard some of these people have for the well-being of others, and how little regard they have for um, their equipment and the things, the material possessions that they have, because they can just replace them or whatever if something happens to them. So they just don't like have a lot of regard for the things that we would think. And I think it shows, Nick really thinks this entire situation is really strange, and
Yeah.
he's like, what the hell just happened? And I think we as readers also are supposed to think like, okay, that was really weird. Like, why were people drinking and driving?
Mm-hmm.
Why do they not seem to care if they were drinking and driving? Why do they not seem to care? And why are they making these horrible decisions because of this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I was like,
also
okay.
the idea that you know, maybe cars weren't as well put together. And so there's another, this is also the second scene that we've had that's involved car repair of some sort. So
Yeah.
there's
True.
a lot to unpack here. This is definitely a file it away, though.
Yeah, this is a set it on a pedestal, we'll come back to it. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
don't forget about it. Just remember this for right now. And then Nick's like, okay. And then goes home. And I was like, all right, Nick. Um, so then he sums up his summer in which he worked, met a girl, that didn't work out, and then he's starting to really like New York. And then I was like, oh, are Nick and Jordan kind of dating? They're going a lot of places. And I was like,
Kind of.
oop, never mind. Nick realizes that Jordan's a compulsive liar. And then next note is, wait, Nick doesn't care if a woman is dishonest. I don't like this. This was a succession of 3 notes very quickly, sentence after sentence, as he's like revealing this relationship with Jordan. I was like, hmm. And then another little probably bit of foreshadowing that I feel is going to happen. Jordan is a horrendously awful driver, and she says that everyone else should be careful when she's on the street. I'm like, okay, Jordan.
Yeah, all this driving stuff, put it on a pedestal and hold it there. Put it in a small box
Mhm.
and put it
Pack
not
it
too
away for
far
now.
away. But yeah,
I was like, okay, Jordan, like being a terrible driver is not something to brag about. Like,
Mm,
she has money. She's a golf champion tournament, not champion, almost champion. But I'm like, you could just like, not
I mean,
drive, get a chauffeur, I guess.
cars were also way different back then, and even just having a car was a huge status symbol. Having a car of your own, and how they were put together, and their safety was like incredibly different
Yeah.
in the time period that this is written. So it definitely shows that she doesn't care that she's such a bad driver. Shows that she also doesn't have that respect for the material and the privilege that she has to drive at all, but also that she doesn't think of consequences.
Yeah.
And that can be said for a lot of people in the
hmm
story.
I know.
Um,
It's like people think in this book specifically that they have a right to things that are a privilege. And it's like I feel like that's getting
yes,
more and more unwrapped.
100%. I think that is a very astute observation for this book in general. Um, and yeah, it is interesting, like how Nick seems not really to like Jordan, but also to like her. Like he's
Yeah.
kind of intrigued about her, but he definitely doesn't think that she's, you know,
Wife
perfect or
material.
whatever. Yeah. I mean, I think he likes hanging out with her. I think he likes going places. At least that's the feeling that you get, but I don't know.
Yeah. And
I,
this is the point where Nick hints that he's kind of engaged because he's breaking something off back home. And I'm like, is this gonna come up ever again? Or like is that just something where like, okay, Nick.
so then it's interesting because right after that, he says, everyone suspects himself of at least one of the cardinal virtues, and this is mine. I am one of the few honest people that I have ever known. And you're
Yeah.
like, dude, like you're honest to us as the
Mhm.
narrator, you're telling us what happened, but if you just signed the letter love Nick to the girl back home,
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, maybe your definition of honest is a little different than mine.
I know. I was like, at
So,
least he's like, it sounds like he's trying to break it off, which
yeah,
is like good
yeah,
because obviously he's
yeah,
pursuing others at this point. Maybe had a fling with a downstairs neighbor man. That's neither here nor there. We don't know.
yeah.
But again, at least he's like trying, which is more
Sure,
than can be said for most people in this novel.
sure. And I mean, it's funny though, like he says he's honest, but he is honest to us, I feel like,
Mhm.
because as the narrator, he didn't have to tell us that stuff, but he
Yeah.
does. He tells it like it is straight up. And I think that also helps you as the reader be like, okay, maybe I can believe him more because he's
Mhm.
willing to tell me who he is as a person, like warts and all, he's gonna
Yeah.
say. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I
Oh,
really started
Nick.
like Nick at this point. I was like, all right, we're chill. Me and you, we're straight. That's fine. We'll figure it out together. We're on a journey. Take me on this adventure with you, Nick.
For sure. We are on a journey, and Nick is the captain of this ship, and he will take us on the journey for sure.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening to this episode of the Bailey Bookish Podcast. As I mentioned at the beginning, on Friday we'll be having the Great Gatsby comparison over on patreon.com. So if you haven't checked us out on Patreon, it's patreon.com/barelybookish. If you join at the $10 a month tier, you get bonus episodes every single month. There's already a few on there. So we did cover Bridget Jones' Diary. We also covered the 1995 versus 2008 Pride and Prejudice. Is that right? That feels right. Well, those are on there. And we have plenty more planned in the future. So be sure to check those out. If you're interested in more exclusive content, there's quite a few options over there. We also will be discussing the rest of Great Gatsby continuing on, and then we'll do the Leonardo DiCaprio movie at the very end. So I feel like the Patreon exclusive for this month is going to be a little bit of a teaser, which is kind of fun. Also, if you are interested in Dungeons and Dragons, over on the Rhapsodic_Geeks channel on Twitch, me and Nova, who's been on here previously, will be guesting over on their Twitch, and we are playing a very fun Acquisitions Incorporated game, which is basically like a franchise of adventurers, and I'm playing a changeling druid for the very first time. I've never played D&D before until now, and I'm really enjoying that. So if that's something you're interested in, I'd love to see you guys in Twitch, and I host them on my Twitch channel on that day. So if you want to watch, and you don't want to navigate all the way over, just go to the Barely Bookish on Twitch, and I'll be hosting it, so you should be able to see it perfectly fine. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got for you guys this week. I hope you guys are having a good week. I hope that fun things are happening for you guys. I hope you guys have a good summer. It's the start of summer, so I'm very excited about summer. I don't know. Summer's just a fun time. Maybe it's the schooling, and summer always feels kind of like a break for me. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got for you guys. Because Jessica didn't get to join us on this outro. I know she would suggest you guys check out your local library, so please consider doing that, because libraries are a great free resource we have here in America. And there are a lot of great things at your local library, and there's a lot of great librarians who are ready to help you with whatever you need. But without further ado, our logo was designed by my little sibling, Sarah. Our theme song is by Raphael Crux on freepd.com. And that's all I've got for you guys, so I'll catch you guys later. Bye!